This video was brought to you by Squarespace. I just got done unpacking and organizing some boxes, and I was just looking up how to do that more. Well, I think it's time to take a little break and talk about Squarespace. If you need a website but you're on a tight budget and you don't know anything about coding and all that scary computer stuff, Squarespace is perfect. I built my website, Arlo Recommends, with zero site building knowledge or experience. I just started with a simple template, added some images and stuff here and there, formatted my text, bada bing bada boom, great website. When I write content for my site, I schedule it all to publish and post to social media automatically. It's so easy and convenient. Squarespace offers loads of powerful extensions if you need them, as well as a really nice suite of analytics. To try out Squarespace for yourself, head to squarespace.com for a free trial. Then when you're ready to launch, head to squarespace.com/Arlo to save 10% off your first website or domain. And now for today's recommendation, a good sharp cheddar. There are cheaper options. I spent many a year settling for store brand and medium sharpness and all that. But you know what? This is just one of those things that is always worth it. Go sharp or go home. My go-to is Tillamook. Just the regular sharp, too. The extra sharp isn't quite worth the extra price. Thanks again to Squarespace. Now, back to unpacking. Oh, I'm researching how to, saying something. Hello, my fresh, fishy friends. I am here today to give you my review of Splatoon 3's Side Order DLC, which is part of the Splatoon 3 Expansion Pass. Even though I have no idea why they called it an Expansion Pass, because the idea of an Expansion Pass was always to have, like, multiple waves of content over time, like a season pass. Except in this case, the only other thing we got was the ability to switch the hub back to Inkopolis, which is fine, I guess. Yeah, I really don't get it. But anyway, Side Order follows in the footsteps of Splatoon 2's Octo expansion, being a substantial piece of single-player content released after the fact. Which I'm really thankful for, because I love Splatoon, but I'm not a competitive player. It's just not who I am. So, single-player content is where it's at for me. And the main campaigns tend to be pretty short, so it's always nice to have something new, One could argue that consistently delivering really short campaigns and then making the player pay for more later is a little but I'm not gonna go into all that today. I didn't know anything about the story going in, so it was fun to launch into this whole weird thing without so much as a clue as to what was happening. In case you are similarly in the dark, I'll just say that you suddenly find yourself in a weird kind of digital world that's been drained of color and you gotta figure out what's going on. And the atmosphere is phenomenal, whether you're in the lobby area or tackling the tower. Everything has this ghostly aura. Everything is just weird. There are these otherworldly creatures hanging around. Little geometric patterns pop up in the air to random drum beats. The background elements within the levels are really strange. Everything has this like high-tech but sanitized kind of feel. Really, the overall presentation is just incredible, but I mean, that's Splatoon for you. From the get-go, everything is bursting with style, personality, with charm. Everything is slick and polished. The team that makes these games is just so incredibly talented. The characters, they're animated super well. Pearl is a little drone that like follows you and helps you, and I particularly love watching her. Her animation is just so expressive and fun. And Zooey Mama, I know Splatoon has some good music, and maybe this music is just as good as all the rest of the music from the other games and stuff. Maybe I just need to refresh myself on it all, but I don't know. This music is so good. It's so good. Octo Expansion had a whole synthwavy, dark cyberpunk kind of aesthetic, and here it's a lot more light. You get a lot more like chill wave stuff, And then like there are higher energy tracks, but they have like very weird qualities to them. I don't know. It's hard to actually describe what makes the music so good, so I will just say, as I played, I kept hearing tracks again and again and being like, ooh, I can't wait to go listen to that on its own. Or, of course, I can't wait to use that in a video. It's just exceptional. I mean, I could spend a lot of time gushing about Splatoon's music. It's got this strong, unique foundation, but then from there, it builds off in all sorts of ways and embraces so many different weird styles of music. And Side Order delivers everything I could want and more, sonically speaking. And that goes for the overall sound design as well. I played primarily on headphones, and as always, the sound effects, they're just so, like, crunchy and rich. Clearly, just as much care goes into the music and the sound as the visuals. So, Side Order is a roguelite experience. This kind of scared me when I first heard about it because I am really not that big on roguelikes and roguelites. Randomized levels plus losing a bunch or all of my progress every time I die. Here's the thing, I die a lot. I don't have the patience for this kind of thing. Especially the older I get, the less time I have to play games, the more games I add to my backlog. Even too many minutes of wasted time can feel like too much to me, so losing entire hours is absolutely not okay. Fortunately, Side Order is a roguelite for people like me. Basically, you've got to climb this tower floor by floor. You're aided by the Pearl Drone, which is a really nice addition to the standard gameplay. You know, she follows you and attacks your enemies whenever you fill up her gauge. Most interestingly, though, she allows you to glide, which plays into these terrain layouts and how you approach each one. I'd like to see the drone used in later campaigns. It's a really nice idea. So there are 30 floors, and each floor you're tasked with overcoming one challenge. Every 10 floors you fight a boss, with the final boss and the end of the campaign at the top. On floors 10 and 20, the game pulls from a list of only 3 bosses, which is a little unfortunate. It doesn't seem quite as random as it could when you always fight 2 of the 3 bosses and, only miss 1. Fortunately, though, these bosses are simply terrific. Because of the campaign structure and your reliance on changing builds, these bosses feature much more open, freeform kind of design. Other Splatoon bosses generally require you to do one particular thing to stun the boss and get in your licks, then repeat twice more to finish it off, kind of Mario style. But instead, Side Order's bosses can be damaged more easily, with weak points taking more, of course, and you stay engaged with them consistently. The fights aren't split up so neatly into 3 completely separate phases, with the exception of one, kind of, but that fight is otherwise still very unique and freeform. They're just so, loosey-goosey, I don't know how else to describe it, and they're still really intense, but you're encouraged to come up with your own strategies, kind of based on your loadout. They just seem to be finely tuned so that they are particularly fun to fight over and over. Like, apart from the fear of losing to them and ending my run, I always really enjoy facing off against them. Back to the floor-by-floor challenges, there's a decently big pool of map layouts the game pulls from, and 5 different kinds of challenges. Bringing balls to their goals, escorting a tower to its goal, taking out all the wheelie fish, defending zones, and destroying all the enemy spawning portals. So they're all the kind of activities that you find in other parts of Splatoon, whether multiplayer modes or campaign levels. And this kind of endlessly recycled content has pros and cons. On the one hand, only 5 types of stages isn't a lot. Each additional stage type would have probably cut down on repetition fatigue and increased variety and replayability pretty dramatically, so even 1 or 2 more types would have been nice. On the other hand, though, each of these are incredibly fun. Like, they could have thrown some more simple goals in there, but it seems like they really condensed the list down to 5 perfect ones that are fun to do lots of times and that change dramatically depending on the stage layout. I'm always bummed when a campaign level has some really fun goal, but it's all behind you in like a couple minutes, and if you're lucky, there'll be a small handful of variations on the mechanic. So it's really satisfying to see these great ideas explored to their fullest, to see how dramatically they change when you insert them into different maps and move elements around and add in all these variables. Sure, it's repetitive, but it's also consistently fun. And the variable difficulty itself also adds a ton to the variety, along with some other random elements. Sometimes a floor will give you a bonus for meeting some criteria, like not taking damage or not using your special. Some floors will have extra dangers, like covering the whole map with enemy ink right at the start, or making you work in the dark. You can choose to skip these, but it raises the chance of more dangers coming up later, which is a really cool idea. And every once in a while, you hit a floor where instead of taking on a challenge, you can visit a vending machine where you spend your accumulated money on chips and extra lives and stuff, which is a really nice convenience that has saved me on more than one occasion. Speaking of chips, I ain't talking about potato chips. As you move up the tower, you earn these chips, and they do all sorts of different things. They can raise your stats, and I'm really impressed with how many different stats they apply to. Previous campaigns have let us upgrade weapons in a few categories, but this lets you improve every possible stat you can think of for all different kinds of weapons and specials. Basic stats like damage, firing rate, range, but then little fine-tuning things like damage at certain distances, ink spread, knockback for specific damage types. There are chips that increase the likelihood of items spawning, that make it easier to string together your combo multiplier, that make your ink damage enemies when they touch it. There's a whole category of chips for giving the drone new moves, just loads and loads. And judging by the little collection screen, it looks like I've only seen about half of them. Then getting more of the same chip will always increase that stat that much more. Sometimes you can even earn multiple of one chip at a go. It's really fun because each floor you get to pick which challenge you want to tackle out of 3, and they come in different difficulty settings. Each one will give you a different chip, so you get to pick and choose what bonuses you want, but of course, plenty of the better ones will be earned from harder challenges. So there's a fun risk and reward element. I particularly like how instead of earning a chip at the end of a challenge, you get it right at the start. So you immediately get the benefits and get to see it in action. It's a relatively small detail, but I just really appreciate it. The randomness also allows the game to kind of help you out as needed. Like, if I made it pretty far in my last run and lost, I find that the game will give me some really good chips from easy challenges early on to help speed things along. And gosh, just the entire chip system, how you get stronger and stronger, and some of your stats are way higher than they would be in any other mode of the game. It's really satisfying, and there's definitely a very intense novelty to it. It's awesome feeling like you've got the best loadout. You're mowing down hordes of enemies, and it makes the whole thing that much more thrilling. You're one mistake away from it all ending, just losing all those bonuses. And there are systems in place to help impatient gamers, such as myself, who really can't stand resetting progress completely after only one of those mistakes. As you move up the tower, you earn pearls, and at the end of each run, you get more depending on how much money you've earned. You can use these pearls to buy permanent bonuses, and again, there's just a huge range. Upping your stats and your max lives, unlocking new chips, etc. You can earn the ability to pay for a continue upon failure, which I really appreciate, but it's pricey, which means that if you fail again after that, you'll get fewer pearls because you spent a bunch of your money already, so it's not too overpowered. So pretty much no matter what, you're always getting stronger. You're always making victory that much more attainable on your next run. And this is what I need. This is exactly what I need. I need solid progression. I need to know that I am getting better and better so I don't feel like I'm beating my head against a wall, trying one thing again and again and again. And as for difficulty level, I feel like they've hit a pretty good sweet spot. Some of these challenges can feel really ridiculously hard. I have lost many runs because I was up against something I just could not even come close to beating. But it also pushed me to keep getting better and being more mindful about my choices. It took me a good few tries to beat the whole thing, but not too many. Not so many that I started to get really frustrated. And I'm easily frustrated, so yeah. I think I might have actually gotten a little lucky right at the end of my first successful run, and if that hadn't happened, then maybe it would have taken me a lot longer and I would have gotten frustrated. I'm not sure. On that note though, I do think I'm lucky in that the difficulty here might just be a sweet spot for me. Not to launch into a huge aside, but Nintendo has a very hard job when it comes to difficulty. Especially if you're talking about something like Splatoon, because the game is being played by both hardcore gamers who have put thousands of hours into multiplayer and young children. Little kids. For someone less experienced, this might be next to impossible and require many, many runs and many, many permanent upgrades. But when I was reading Reddit threads about the game, they were filled with Splatoon regulars who were like, I beat it in one try. This is too easy. I'm not great at Splatoon. I don't really play it much, but I'm pretty experienced with games overall, so that's why I feel like I'm right there in the middle. Where it's a good, solid challenge challenge all around, but not too bad. So depending on who you are and how good you are at Splatoon, mileage may vary. Good thing is though, the game very much wants you to play through lots of times. You can't unlock everything until you beat the whole tower with every weapon set. So even if you're pretty good at the game and you fly your way right up to the top of that tower, there's a reason to keep jumping in, and I imagine some of these weapons are probably harder to use than others. Me, I don't have any interest in trying to beat the whole thing with an umbrella. I'm sorry. I feel like anything other than the splatter shot and probably like the dualies, just not gonna work for me. So unfortunately, it kind of feels like I'm already done, and it's a bit of a shame. I really do think the whole campaign is fun, but starting a new run is just such a commitment, you know? And I seriously do stink with any of the other weapons. It's just not gonna happen. So I'm effectively out of stuff to do, and it didn't take me too long to get to this point. Oh well. Finally, let's talk about the story. I love Splatoon campaigns because I love good single-player content, and Splatoon is just incredibly fun to play. But the story is also of particular importance to me. I'm not like super deep into the lore of the series or anything, but I always enjoy the simple spectacle. The characters, the cutscenes, and of course, the humongous lore revelations the games sometimes drop on us. In the story department, Side Order is quite good. It's all the fun and flair I expect from the series. The humor is good. Like I said, the presentation is just phenomenal. The overall setup is very interesting, and the whole thing comes to a predictably epic conclusion with an incredibly fun final sequence that might just be my very favorite in the series so far. The one single mark against it is that it doesn't deliver one of those lore bombs we've grown accustomed to. Some of the other campaigns give you the most enormous, world-changing revelations, whereas Side Order feels a bit more like a self-contained story where some cool stuff happens and that's about it. It's really not a problem though. You can't always reveal some huge new truth about the Splatooniverse. Sometimes you just want to tell a good story, and you know what? That's okay. Certainly to its credit, the story incorporates the whole chaos versus order theme, and to this day, I still think the idea of basing a game's story on the outcome of a real-life event and having the characters reference that event in-world, it's just the coolest. It's so incredibly cool. It's fun to imagine what elements of this story already existed before that Splatfest and how it might have been different if Order won. Overall, I'm happy with Side Order. I really enjoyed it. The whole roguelite idea isn't generally quite my kind of thing, but it did enough to keep me engaged all the way to the end, so that's saying something. It was really fun while it lasted, though I do wish I had more reason to jump back in. That's really the problem with it when you boil everything down. The replayability is just kinda all over the place, depending on who you are. If you're not great at the game, attempting to climb the tower over and over and over again can probably seem like a slog, I'm sure. But if you are good, you might find it too easy? Of course, being good enough to clear it many times opens up the option of doing so with all the weapons and unlocking everything, which actually means more replayability, but then that sounds like it could get pretty old after a while, so I don't know. Considering how much playtime I got out of it, I do think it's maybe a bit too expensive. We also had to wait such a long time for it that only playing it here and there for a few days, like a few sittings total, slightly disappointing. A little cheaper and a little sooner would have made the short duration and repetitive nature a bit easier to swallow. Even if it's not perfect though, it's hard to complain too much. I still had lots of fun with it. I got to experience the thrill of finally beating that final floor. It was awesome. I got to go through all the fun story sequences and enjoy the marvelous presentation. It was a good time. Well, thank you for watching. I am very sorry that I never ended up doing a whole review of Splatoon 3, but thinking about it, I believe that ship has officially sailed, sadly. You will have to settle for my basic impressions video, which, I don't know, pretty much summed up my thoughts on it anyway, so, it's fine. My only real regret is that I didn't get to use the silly title I had in mind for the review. Oh well. We'll get Splatoon 4 in like 2 years, so, no big deal. I'll use it then.